All right, everybody, we're back. Brand new show here in the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. I'm Dr. Stephen Cabral, board certified Doctor of Naturopathy, founder of the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute. Today, we've got a great question to answer, and this is obviously from our amazing listener community, and that is, as a health coach or health practitioner, personal trainer, chiropractor, etc., should you start a podcast? So we get this question all the time, and I want to share with you, as someone who's been in this space now almost 10 years, whether now is the right time for you to do that, and what is your reasoning is going to be such a big part of it. So let's go into it overall. What is a podcast? Well, most of us know now, obviously on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you want to host it, you can host it yourself privately. It is you getting on either video or just audio, or of course both, and being able to record something that you can then put out there into the ether. And it's a lot like publishing a video on YouTube. So the goal, of course, is to what? Share your information, usually for free, unless you have a paid-based account, to an audience that you hope will potentially benefit from that information and maybe even become a client of yours in the future. So that's the goal of a lot of people. I can share with you myself. Why did I start one back in 2016? It is because that is the year that I had really completely booked up. So we'd booked up maybe later, I would say mid 2015. So the idea came to me mid 2015. I'd like to start a podcast. Why? It's because I didn't yet want to write the book, but I always loved to teach. And for me, the idea of doing a podcast for just 15 to 20 minutes, because my show is a shorter one, it's not an interview style, and we'll go through that in just a moment, because sometimes you're better at one than the other, would allow me to teach again. Like, that's truly what I loved. So I was completely booked out client-wise, which again, very appreciative and grateful for that. And I still wanted to be able to teach and help more people. But I didn't want to create more locations. I already had 2 locations. We were doing 20,000 appointments a year. That was our max. No matter what, we couldn't take on more people. And so again, like, I felt good and I wanted to share freely. So that's what I did. And you know what happened? I got about 300, downloads probably month 1. But each and every month it grew just a little bit. And then the goal was eventually, could I replace the 20,000 people we would see per year, one-on-one, with 20,000 listens a day? And so we were able to accomplish that about 3.5 years in. So it took a little bit of time. And now I'm happy to say over the last few years, we get about 1 million downloads a month. And it's been a great ride. But I'll tell you this, is that it is a lot of work. There is a lot of effort that is put in. So I'm recording a daily show. To me, I honestly find it easier. Here's why. I have a lot of content and topics that I love to talk about. I've been in this industry now 30 years. So, 30 years from when I started undergrad-wise, 26 years full-time. And so when I look at the amount of questions that I've been asked, or the amount that, because I'm reading every day and researching for at least 1 hour a day, there's just so much I come across, so much that I love to talk on. And this is what I love to do, is teach. So for me, I enjoy what I do. And that's why I do a podcast. So it's not a have to, it's a get to for me. And even when I was working literally 80 hours a week, and I would do 40 hours of clients, in between clients, I would record 30 minutes, right? So it'd be like 10 minutes kind of prep, and then it'd be 15 to 20 minutes recording. That was it, right into the next client appointment. So it was a little wild in the beginning. Now, I've got a great team. I have people that can help share that on social, put it up on the website. So there's a lot that goes into it. So I don't want you to think that it's just record and then it's out there. No, you actually want to sign up for a software. And I won't go through all the different things today. We can actually, if this is a big interest to the community, we can do a whole webinar on how to start and create your first podcast. So happy to do that. But what we answer the question here today is if it's right for you. So first, keep in mind, let's say that you start with, no, you're going to either do it with a partner each week, kind of answering questions from the community. That's always the easiest way to do it, of course. Or I shouldn't say of course. If you're looking for the easiest way to do it, you'll do what I do on the Cabral house calls on the weekend. So my podcast is the Cabral Concept, if you're not familiar with it. And on the weekend shows, I literally take 5 questions on a Saturday and 5 questions on a Sunday. And then Monday through Friday are all different topics. Now, also, what I want to share is that I don't record on the weekends. The weekends are family time. And so what I am doing is I'm typically recording 2 to 3 shows 2 to 3 days a week. And so I just batch them in that way. I've done it all sorts of ways where I record them all in a half a day, and that's like really draining of energy. And also I have a lot more workshops and other things that I also teach. So that's one part to it. So one is solo. The second is with the partner, and that's always nice, having a nice little conversation between two people with great dialogue. And then the third one is either two partners interviewing people once a week, or you interviewing one person once a week. And that's a great way to start a show as well, because you can also don't have to necessarily be the expert if you don't feel you're the expert, but you get to invite on individuals who might be an expert in mental health, in autism-based spectrum disorders, in menopause, like whatever it might be. And you can invite the person on, and it could be a 30-minute Q&A, or it could be a 60-minute Q&A, or anywhere in between. It could even be rapid fire. You might be the rapid fire show host, and you just get 5 questions in 15 minutes. And that could be a nice one. I was always taught that, sure, long form is fantastic, but oftentimes the average commute is about 22 to 23 minutes. I learned that from John Lee Dumas, who's one of my I always hire a mentor and coach for everything, literally. So I hired Jamie Masters back in the day. I hired John Lee Dumas, just great people. I've hired consultants for this and for that. And so I've learned from the best, we'll put it that way. And then I try to share with you much of that knowledge for free. That's the goal on this podcast, of course, and in the IHP community, and certainly inside of Practice Built. And so what I want to share with you is this, is that if you love it, and it's a part of you teaching, it's a great thing to do. What I want to share with you, though, is that your podcast each week is thrown into a sea of abyss. And that means that there are a million other podcasts out there, right? And so you then have to market that podcast just like you would market anything else. That means you need to put it out there on social media. You need to see if your guest might repost it in their stories, accept a post from you. Not everyone will. Like, that's just not like required to typically be on a show. And it just might not be something that they're willing to do. And so there's a lot of different pros and cons to that. What I would say is this, is that truthfully, for most practitioners starting out, it is not the best use of your time. It's really not, because you're not going to be discovered on a podcast typically, just like it's unlikely you'll be discovered on YouTube. It is possible. However, the likelihood of you being discovered on a Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts is much lower. I will say this, on Instagram, it is much higher. So for me, if I was someone saying, I want to get my voice out there, I always teach all of our IHPs, and certainly inside of Practice Built in the mentorship, master one specific network, social media platform, or technology first, right? So for me, I'm saying Instagram / Meta / Facebook, right? Because you can double post. You post once and it will go to both, is your best use of time right now. It really is. Because if you're willing to do a 10-minute video, okay, well, you could post that. Like, you can post whatever you would like. Typically, you're not going to want to do that much, but a good 3-minute topic. And if you want to do that daily, it's going to go so much further on Instagram. It really will. So instead of doing the 5 questions for one podcast once a week, I would do the 5 questions, but I would do 3 minutes each day of the week, Monday through Friday. Like, without a doubt, you will see greater yield from that in terms of new clients and followers coming to you than you would. The likelihood would be at least 100x better yield than being found on a Spotify, YouTube, or anything else. It's just much more difficult if you're starting from zero, which if you're listening to this show and you're in a podcast, you're starting from zero on those channels, right? Unless you already have a following, which is a different story, and now you're driving your following to the podcast. I didn't have a following when I started in 2015, 2016, except my local community, my local clients. And of course, I shared it with them, but it's just much smaller when you're doing it local. And then, of course, if you're putting out good work and value, people will share, and over time it will grow. But it will grow faster on Instagram and Meta, at least right now as I'm recording this in 2026. So that's my highest recommendation. Short videos on Meta platforms, distributed that way. Any one that does well, and I talked about this before, as an outlier, then you can boost that. And so, again, we talk about this in the business mentorships, is that if something is if something gets 3 to 5 times more views, one of your reels will say, that might be something you put $5 or $10 behind because it's bringing in maybe 1 lead or 2 new leads every week. And ultimately, if you're trying to grow your business, that's a great thing. Providing free content for 99% of people. And then that 1% are the people who say, you know what? I'd like to learn more about what you have to say about your particular niche. And that's why, again, at the end of level 1, go through the free business course, because most important thing you can do is come up with your niche and talk to one audience. And of course, we have these on those podcasts as well. Now, before you did a podcast, before you went all in on that, because there's production to it, right? So first you need to record. I've got a microphone here. I share with you all the equipment for free, all the different things. Simple camera, nothing crazy. And then you're going to have software like Libsyn or something like that. Or we can link these up for you if you'd like. But it takes time, right? So it's like anything that's going to take time, you just need to make sure that it's going to have yield from it. In my opinion, your iPhone with Instagram edits, being able to do a short video is going to be so much faster and better. And then after that, what might you want to create before a podcast? Maybe a 20 to 30 minute webinar for your niche. Now that's a one-time video that you can create a PowerPoint slide deck on and then move through that and record it, and it can be pre-recorded. So that would be pretty great. That's a one-time, call it podcast or video for your niche, and that's free. That would be an amazing one. And we'll talk about webinars in a couple weeks from now, so stay tuned for that one. And then one other one you could do is a free mini PDF guide. Again, what your niche needs to know, answering their top questions. And if we haven't already gone through that, we'll certainly cover that in the next few weeks on the show, or at least within the next couple of months. So that would be my recommendation. First, take your time to create your podcast on Instagram and Meta, where you're going to get better reach. That podcast instead, though, is going to be mini clips, which is going to get you better chances for it to go viral for you. Again, viral for, think of like who's a big name out there in any of this space, like Andrew Huberman, right? Viral for him might be 10 million views. Viral for me might be 150,000 views for a video. Viral for someone else might be, call it 1,500 views or maybe 10,000 views, right? That's more viral. So again, what are you looking for? 1 or 2 more clients, like right now, right? This week. And so that's what you're looking for. You don't need 1 million views to get 1 or 2 new leads. That, as long as your social media set up properly, your website set up properly, scheduling set up properly, your links to get on that discovery call set up properly, then that's going to happen. That will absolutely happen. So that is my highest recommendation. Then after that, move to the webinar. We'll talk about that in just a couple of weeks. And then after that, you can talk about that mini PDF giveaway, and that would be a fantastic thing to do. Then as you start to build a following, build an audience on Instagram and Meta, guess what? You can then launch your podcast to an audience, and then you will have more views, listens, downloads, shares, which ultimately is what you're looking to do. So first, grow your base, and then you can amplify it from there. Hopefully this was helpful. All the show notes and takeaways will be at ihp.coach/428. Have an amazing rest of the week. We'll talk with you soon. Let us know if there's any questions in the comments.